Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'm in the workshop. It's March and there is some noise going on outside. So in the distance there's a helicopter and quite regularly I get a crow come on the roof of the workshop and he makes a bit of a noise. So what am I up to today? Well, revising some rigs. So we did the up and over rig tutorial, part 1. And from that I had a whole raft, a whole flood of information that come through for revisions, how to do it differently, things that could be done better, things that people wouldn't do. There was some really good advice of things people wouldn't want us to do on those rigs. And I've sort of consolidated it all and I've used it. And recently, a couple of days ago, I caught my PB small-eyed ray. And what made it all the more sweeter was it was on the rig that we'd shown on the channel and that I developed using all of the feedback from everyone that had participated. And that just blows me away, because that just goes to show that you can use something on a channel, you can get input from other people, everyone else's experiences, consolidate it all into one thing, make it, use it and be successful with it. I couldn't ask for anything better. I like the channel for what it teaches me, and it teaches me a lot, and I feel like I'm on a bit of a journey. So my fishing, my angling's not the, I'm not no professional angler, I'm not amazing at any of this sort of stuff. I'm just trying to do it and get better at it. I've met loads of people and I'm improving my rigs. So I'm going to show you what we've been doing. I've got a couple already made up. Now this seemed to be the development of where we ended up, sort of. So an imp at the bottom, an aero, let's just get the right words, premium pulley swivel. I use pennel hook setup for most things. I've downsized the beads, just have a look there, look. I've downsized the beads to 4mm beads, I think. I'm just going to check now because I'd like to get all the details right. So they're Gemini 4mm rig beads. So I've downsized my bead size. I'm using Rovex rig tubing, which seems to have the right balance of flexibility but nice to use and doesn't just deteriorate. And we were using the Gemini Genie Link with an £80 power swivel at the top. And when you put that all together, whatever your rig body was, you doubled it for your hook snood, and when your imp hits the water, everything ejects, all goes down, you dress your line out and you end up with a full running ledger with a really nice long hook snood. Fishes really well. Fishes really well with just a couple of observations. Sometimes, very rarely, the line stays snagged on top of the Gemini Genie Link and the rig comes back detached at the bottom but still hung over. Sometimes it detaches in flight. So in the whole scheme of line stretch, can you imagine when that's on, it's being cast out and the line stretches, as the stretch relaxes it detaches, and it detaches in flight. And you can usually tell that is what's happening when it detaches about, I don't know, 2/3 of your cast out. 2/3, 3/4 of your cast out. Just off in the distance you see it detach before it hits the water. So they're two observations, but this fishes really nicely. Really nicely. The combination of a full running ledger and a nice long flowing hook trace presents the bait well. Compact for casting. All your bait tidy on there. Goes out like a missile. Good stuff. That on its own is a cracking rig. It's a really good rig and I like using it. What would I like to change about it? As I struggle to hook that up, the next thing I did, people didn't like or commented on the body that I was using. So I upgraded the rig body to £60 ASSO. £60 ASSO, low stretch, extra strong, very supple. That's the stuff. So I upgraded my next rig to incorporate that for the body. But I wanted to get rid of that detachment in flight, and I wanted it slightly longer, with a longer hook snood, because I just feel that the further away that is from the weight, the more chance you've got of a ray. Imagine a ray with his big wings, you've got your big grip lead, comes near it, touches the grip lead, don't like that, and off he goes. Regardless of where your bait is. That's my neighbour laughing in the background. He's probably laughing because he can hear me. So I wanted to get away with that detachment in flight, and just at the same time that I was even considering that, there was a release from Trident Tackle for the hangover. That's interesting, because one of the things that I was sort of nitpicking about was the Gemini Genie link at the top. This is really tiny and compact, absolutely minuscule, really tiny. And if I show you it actually on the line, I'm just going to detach that to get it out of the way. If we look at that, see if we can just get that into focus. Look how tiny that little piece is. Very little chance of getting snagged up on that little piece. And it looks nice. I like it. In fact, I'll go so far as to say I already like it because I've already used it. So the next evolution was to make that same rig, but with the upgraded body, £60 ASSO, instead of the Genie link at the top, to use the Trident Hangover. Getting somewhere now. But I still had no fault or any inclination to change the Gemini pulley or the Imp, because I like them. And when you go for the release, full captive, a little bit of tension on the line, the whole thing just ejects lovely. It does eject really nice. And then I've got an even longer flowing trace on this. I've got a 2.5 foot body and a 5 foot hook length. and I've been catching using this. I really like it. So the next question then is, what's going on up here? Because I see you've got a spring. I see you've got a spring. Yeah, I've got a spring. So if you have a look at it, what I've actually got comes in the pack, an SRT type spring. Don't think it's made by SRT. And the Hangover. But what they supply in the pack are crimps. When we were discussing other rigs on one of the other videos, people don't like crimps. They think it reduces the diameter of the line and puts a weak point. Especially if it's in your main body, when you're casting, giving it Billy Big O's, people have had it snap. Now I'll hold my hand up now. I've never snapped a rig at a crimp point. I don't know if that's because I'm crimping lighter, because I'm using a proper crimping tool. I do use pliers sometimes. I'll hold my hand up to that one. But I've never had one snap at a crimp point, but people have. But I would like to use the Hangover and the spring. But then I watched another video. And I'm going to put a link to the guy's channel above me now, showing how to use power gun and stop knots using power gun. New one on me, this one. Never used power gun before, so I tried it. And the beauty of it is, when you've got your rig and you're casting, look at the tension. And what it does is, when you cast and it goes under compression, and then in mid-flight, when it loosens itself up a bit, it still remains in contact. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to alleviate that stretch when you're loading up for casting, and the release in mid-air, to make sure that it only detaches when it hits the water. Amazing. So I don't hold the Hangover captive above. The swivel does a job of retaining that. That can go wherever it likes. I'm not fussed. The spring is free running. You can see the spring can go up and down the line. But now here's the good bit. Instead of using the crimps, there are 2 stop knots using power gum. Why are you using 2 stop knots? I'm using 2 stop knots for a very good reason. If you wet the line, to make it easier, if you move the lower one, and it's quite stiff, it doesn't want to go, but once it moves it does. I've separated those 2 stop knots now. Now I can move the top one. Just put a little bit of wet on the line again, because it won't want to move. He says, and oh, there we go. And it's gone. Now I don't know if you can see, I've just doubled the distance from the swivel to the hangover. Why do you need to do that? This is the good bit. If you was to crimp that in position, there'd be no adjustment. If you use the power gum stop knots, it's infinitely adjustable. So when you clip up and you do your up and over and you put your hook, which is going to fight me, in, and there's not quite enough, see how baggy that is? Not quite enough tension, there's no tension on that spring at all. What I can actually do is if I move the top knot and then move the bottom knot to meet it, I have now tensioned that spring 5-10mm, and because the knots acting against each other lock it into position, it's not going anywhere. So now I've got that full function of stretchability and the spring taking up the tension to make sure it doesn't detach. All good stuff. But it will only detach when it hits the water. No crimps. No crimps, no weak point. I'm just wondering if they've thought that out. When they send those crimps out, whether they'll realise that that might be the failure point in that piece of kit. But definitely, I totally advocate, and I love using them now, power gum stop knots. Amazing. So what we end up with is whatever length body you want, 2 foot, 2.5 foot, 3 foot, have all of them in your rig wallet. Your hook snood, double the length of the body, minus about 3 or 4 inches, and use a power gum stop knot so you can always tension your rig no matter what happens. It's good stuff, isn't it? Love it. That is now my go-to rig, up and over. That is what caught me my PB small-eyed ray the other day. I was chuffed to bits. 1, that I caught the ray, 3 days worth of trying. 2, that it was on a rig of different components and it works a treat. I can hear a doggy in the background. It's the beauty of filming at home. So just to round up the components. Rovex rig tubing. Just stops any unusual snags down by the weighted end. Especially when using grip leads. The Trident hangover. Getting annoyed now. The Imp. They're all at it. 4mm Gemini rig beads. Gemini premium pulley swivel. Power gum. New best friend. Love it. Amnesia. £40 hook snood. Asso. £60 body. I use £40 swivels for the hook snoods, £80 power swivels for the top of the rig body. And that's the lot. That's the lot. So what I'm going to do now is make one, show the detail, put it up as part 2, and then leave this open for comments. Comment away, fellas. Absolutely, either tear it apart, tell me what to adjust, tell me what I can do better, tell me what I'm doing wrong, tell me what you like, and try it yourselves. Try it yourselves and tell me how you get on. Because if you can use it, spot the little intricacies, little things you can change, let me know. See if you can help me improve my catch rate. Really looking forward to hearing what you got to say. So without any further ado, is that the right way of saying it? Without any further delay, that sounds better, let's get on and make one. So here we are in the workshop. I've got my new table all laid out. I've got more room in the workshop now because I've made space in my man cave. And I'm going to start. So I'm going to go for a 30-inch rig body. 30-inch rig body. So I'm cutting off about 40 inches. 40 inches, rough and ready, just to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is attach an 80-pound power swivel to the top of the line. Attach it to the top of the line. Now, there are variations of knots. For this one, I'm going to use a blood knot. Why am I going to use a different knot than what I normally use? To show that there's no one way of doing this stuff. It's whatever you are most confident with and what knots that you can do that give you the most strength, reliability. So if you're seeing someone else do something else on the channel, you've tried it, whatever it may be, and you can't get on with it, my recommendation is to always go back to what you know, what you're confident with, and what you know you can use. So that's the top of the rig that's going to go to the rod tip. So beneath that we need to put the trident hangover. We're not going to use the crimp, we're just going to use the spring and the plastic hangover itself. The springs have a knack of all winding themselves together, but if you, as you grab one, if you give it a bit of a twist, they do come free. They're in a nice little small bag. So because I'm working to the top of the rig, got to make sure that you get the top of the hangover. Make sure that you get it up the right way. You can run that all the way up to the top. And the spring on a table isn't the easiest of things to get hold of. And then we'll put the spring on. Okay, so I've got the power swivel, the hangover and the spring. No crimps, no nothing else, because we're going to tie stop knots with power gun on there in a minute. So what we need down this end now is we're going to need a 4mm bead. I'm getting 2 out of the packet now to save me rummaging around in a minute. So a 4mm bead, Gemini rig bead, and the premium swivel. And the premium swivel straight through, and then the other bead. And to terminate that end now, we need Gemini 45-pound snood swivel. And the reason why I'm using 45-pound snood swivels, I'm only using 40-pound amnesia mainline hook snood. So it seems pointless using big, strong swivels that are totally past the grade of the line. Again, just going to use a blood knot on this one, just for continuation, just for this rig. And this is a straightforward blood knot, not a blood knot with clench. These 45-pound power swivels are tiny. Snood swivels They do look weeny, but all these little terminal tackle adjustments and changes all add to the aerodynamics and fewer tangles, and wherever you can make it as small and as tidy as you can to get the most benefit. So that is all now captive, that train of terminal tackle. So at the top we've got an 80-pound Gemini power swivel, we've got 60-pound ASSO main line, and we've got the Trident hangover, which consists of the plastic component and the spring, but no crimp. Further down, between two 4mm beads, we've now got the premium Gemini pulley, and then at the very bottom we've got a 45-pound Gemini snood swivel, and that all turned out exactly 3 feet 36 inches. So I'm going to need a hook snood of anything up to 72 inches, but I'm not going to go that much, and I'll show you the beauty of where this rig can go in a minute. So now, to make this rig adjustable, we need to use power gum. Not this important, but this is 14 pound 0.65 millimeters. 0.65 millimeters power gum. And what I found is that if I cut approximately 6 to 7 inches, and that is how I do this, because 6 to 7 inches I find easy to tie. If I go too short, it's too difficult, but there is wastage. So out of all of that, you're going to end up using less than half of it. That's how I find it. You lay the power gum across the top of the main line with a tag end of about 1 inch, so it's just laid across in a perfect cross. And you take 5 turns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now you've got the long tag away from you, the 1 inch tag to you, and 5 reasonably tidy tight turns. You make a loop and bring the 2 tag ends facing the same way. Pinch and hold. And now you've got to go through that loop you've just made 5 times. Back up to the other end. 1, 2. This is where you need 3 fingers. 3 fingers, 3 hands. 4. This last one's fighting me. Gets a little bit difficult towards the end. And 5. So now what you've got is you've got a loop across your line, 5 twists one way, a loop and 5 twists again, and then just gently start to pull it together. When you start to feel any kind of friction in it, with all knots, just wet it. And just tease it down. Just keep an eye on it, make sure it all dresses down nice. Help it if it needs it. And then you end up with that. So you end up with 2 long tag ends and a knot that looks like a blood knot. You need to cut those 2 tag ends fairly short, although it's not critical that they're really tiny short. And there we have it, 1 stop knot, and that stop knot would function on its own, but I find if I tie a second one beneath it, the 2 lock together. The 2 lock together. Someone else now. Got a chainsaw or a saw out on a Sunday morning, I might add. So exactly the same again. A 1 inch tag end, 5 turns, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set a loop, pinch the 2 ends together, and then pass your long end, your long tag end, through that loop 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you end up with 2 1-inch tag ends with all your bundle of stuff in the middle. Start to draw it down, and then just as you start to feel a little bit of friction, just wet your line and help bring it all together. Once you're there or thereabouts, bring it all down nice and tight, and then you just end up with your 2 long tag ends here. Trim your tag ends. And again, like I say, I haven't been able to find a way that you don't end up with that excess at the end. So I've now got 2 stop knots made out of power gum. Just wet the line because they're there to act as grippers. Slide it up, slide the second one up towards it, and there you have a double stop in power gum to hold your Trident hangover. And that is the rig body complete. Now we just need a hook snood. Hook snood, we know we're 36, so I'm just going to go, 60. 60 to show the adjustability with this one. So we're using 40-pound amnesia onto the 45-pound Gemini hook swivel. Hook snood swivel. Going to do another blood knot. Trim off the tag end. Now before I put the hooks on for this one, I am going to use a little bit of rig tubing just for that piece there. It just helps to keep the hook snood, using about 80mm. Just helps to keep the hook snood away from the grip lead, stop it tangling up. I haven't had any problems with the rig tubing, and I've only had very few without, so I think it's worth having it there. Because of this little 45-pound snood swivel and this Rovex, it actually goes over the body of the swivel, but be careful to still leave it so it's free running, so the swivel can still do its job. Now for this particular rig, I'm using a combination of hooks. I'm using Cox & Royal Surf and Uptide Extra 2.0, and this is for the pennel. I like the shape of this hook and the size of this hook. It works really well for a pennel, especially for smaller ray species. And be mindful that the line should go, if that is the back and that is the front, put the line through the front. Then when the hook length pulls, it has the effect of hooking the fish as opposed to from the back unhooking the fish. And for the bottom, I'm going for Sakuma Manta 3.0. And 3.0, I find the length of the hook isn't too long, the actual depth of the hook isn't too long, and the actual 3.0 size, 4.0 can be a bit beefy sometimes. 3.0 just seems to be a nice compromise. So I'm just going to tie this on. Lots of noise in the background today for a Sunday morning. I thought I was golden on a Sunday morning. Oh, everyone will be in bed, no one will be doing anything. But the sun's out. The sun's out And this is the first nice, calm, what I would class as one of the first days of spring. And everyone's out beavering away. Everyone's out beavering away, doing little jobs. Okay, so we have a completed rig. Now we just need to prove that it all goes together and that it's adjustable. So I need a weight. I forgot to get a weight. To connect the weight, we're going to use an imp. I do like imps. I like imps in their for certain tasks. I do like using captive bait holders and all the other bits and pieces, but I do like an imp. The more I've been using them recently, the more I like them. Okay, so that is the rig body, and that would go up to your main line, and the hook length comes up, and as the description says, up and over. Always difficult to do it on your own, not on a rod tip. And the weight's fighting me, as it always does. Okay, and I am golden. I didn't need to adjust that one. So the beauty of this rig now is there it is in all its glory. It is adjustable at the top, but it's held captive for now. But I could split those two power gum knots and adjust that. And I've got my body length, I've got my imp, and if I was to detach that now as if it was hitting the water, it all ejects. That body is completely clear now, and that hook snood, although it's ejected and gone miles away, we would have my rod tip this way, my hook snood flowing in the current that way, in the tide, and a full running ledger for really good bite indication at the rod tip. And there it is. That is the version of an up and over rig that I am currently using the Trident Hangover, an imp and some Gemini tackle. So it is an amalgamation of loads of different parts, different components, but it fishes really well. I'm really pleased with this now. This is one of my go-to rigs. I hope this has been useful to you. I hope that being along for the journey, seeing part 1, seeing how that rig's developed, seeing part 2, and that is where it is at the moment. It may develop some more, but that's how I'm fishing with it now. So all it leaves for me to say is tight lines and happy fishing, and I hope to spend some time with you again sometime soon. Bye for now. Happy days.